Welcome. We're continuing our look at the story of Jacob. This time we're in Genesis chapters 28 and 29. We're going to look at how he steals the blessing. But before we do that, there's actually only a handful of biblical people that we visit or we journey with over a long period of time. They'd be Jacob, to a lesser extent Joseph, David, maybe the prophet Jeremiah, and Paul, although I don't get a sense of Paul, so much a sense of what Paul was like. Certainly not like with Jacob. We know exactly what he's like. But with all of these people, they're not perfect people, and they're certainly not people who always get it right. And I find it utterly fascinating that here in the scripture we have ultra-realistic portrayal of what people are like, and Jacob is like the father of the nation. And I find it quite amazing, like with the disciples in Jesus' time, that we get to see them warts and all. And I think that's a really powerful, strong message, that God is with us as we are. And it's certainly true that God works in messy situations. So just a reminder, when we looked at Rebekah, she didn't get pregnant for 20 years. And then she finally gets pregnant as a result of Isaac's prayers. And it's a terrible pregnancy. She's desperate and she asks God, what's going on? And she's told she's carrying twins and they're going to become two nations. They're going to divide. One's going to be stronger. The elder will serve the younger. And when the twins are born, Esau's first out, he's very impetuous. What you see with Esau is exactly what you get. You know what he's thinking, you know what he's feeling. Jacob's more of a long-term planner, a schemer. Esau loves being outside. Jacob's more a homebody. Esau is Isaac's favourite. Jacob is his mother's favourite. And last time we looked at how Esau came in all hot and bothered one day after a big long day's hunting, and he's desperately hungry, and Isaac's got something nice cooking, and I'm dying, you might as well give it to me. And he sells his birthright as firstborn son for a meal. And Jacob's quite happy to seize that opportunity to gain. But now we come to the unique blessing, the blessing given to Abraham and Sarah, the blessing that's been passed on to Isaac and Rebekah, and now it's time to pass it on to one of the twins. Either God is going to work that blessing through Esau or through Jacob. And Rebekah is determined that her son, her favourite, is going to get the blessing of land, the blessing of descendants, and the blessing that through them the whole earth is going to be blessed. So there's Rebekah, and she's getting Jacob to dress up as Esau. And I'm wondering, is this faith or is it simply just favoritism? Is she trusting that that word given to her when she was pregnant, that she needs to follow up and make sure that word happens? I don't know. And certainly there are lies and half-truths. When Jacob comes into his father, his aged father, he's dressed up in Esau's clothes and he's got goat skin on the back of his hands and the back of his neck. Why so quickly? Your God cleared the way for me. And so finally, after the near blind Isaac checks, yep, smells like Esau. There's Esau's clothes. There's Esau's hairy hands and neck. He blesses Jacob. And later, when Esau comes in, horrified at what his brother's done, he discovers the blessing can't be revoked. And so there's bad blood. And in fact, Esau is saying, well, as soon as Dad's out of the way, I'm going to kill you. You're gone. Rebekah hears about that and arranges for Jacob to go off and find a wife from her side of the family at Haran. But God is still at work in all their lives. And all of them are still going to be blessed and cared for. They're all in God's love. And the challenge for Esau is he has to learn positively with it. He's so desperate for his father's attention and his father's blessing. Isaac doesn't have much to give him, but there's that cryptic last word, but when you throw off the yoke from your brother, you'll be free. And maybe that means Esau has to learn positively to live with life as it is, not as he thinks he's entitled to it. He needs to change his attitude. Then he will be free of being worried and obsessing about his brother having cheated him. Jacob runs away, or he's sent away, and St. John of the Cross, a 16th century Spanish Christian, said, to get to a place we've never been before, we have to go by a way we don't know. So there's Jacob running away with just what he can carry, and he's got to be feeling threatened and scared. Even though he's got God's blessing, it doesn't mean much when you're out there by yourself in unknown territory. And it is scary. He's never been on this road before. Each step is a step into the unknown and the uncertain. When's the next village? When's the next watering place? Where's a safe place that I can get off the road and sleep? And he's just sleeping wrapped up in whatever he's got. Hasn't even got a hike pillow, and he uses a stone for a pillow. And he receives an amazing, beautiful God dream. There's a ramp going up to heaven, and there's angels travelling up and down on it. And God appears to him in the dream and very clearly speaks to Jacob, reaffirms the promises of land, children, and a blessing to the whole world through him. God says, I know you're going off now to find a wife. I'm with you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to prosper you. And I'm going to bring you back safely home. Trust me. Remember, Jacob's a trickster or a schemer. And I think he's got a limited capacity to receive the gift of this dream and this blessing. Sure, he sets up a rock altar and pours oil over it, using the very stone he slept on. He knows this is a special holy place. But then he makes a vow. If you keep all your side of what you've promised, if you bring me safely back home, then you're going to be my God and I'll worship you and I'll give you a tenth. Whoa, he hasn't exactly got it, has he? But maybe he's like all of us at some times. God promises to be with us, and we're so caught up in our fears or our worries or obsessions or things that we're intensely focused on, we forget. Or we don't trust, or we think we've got to make it happen. We're invited to be in a much bigger place than our own immediate needs. We're invited to be in the place of God's heart, God's mercy, God's forgiveness. There's a fascinating connection to the first chapter in the Gospel of John. At the end of the Gospel of John, at the end of the first chapter, Philip has started to follow Jesus. He goes to his mate Nathanael and says, hey, I found the promised one to Israel, the one that's promised, all the way from Abraham and Sarah, the one who's promised to bring a blessing to the whole world. And when he brings Nathanael to see Jesus, Jesus looks at him and says, I saw you when you were sitting under your fig tree. Here's an Israelite in whom there's no guile, there's no trickery. And that's fascinating. It's the opposite of Jacob, because we look at Jacob and we say, here's someone who's full of trickery. He's always trying to work out how to make things work his way. And then Jesus goes on to say to Nathanael, you'll see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So it's no longer a physical place, Bethel, where there's this meeting place of heaven and earth. It's now the Son of Man, Jesus. And at this time of Easter, we're reminded the cross and the empty grave, those are the connecting places for us into heaven. The cross, where we know that we're sinful, but we're forgiven. The empty grave, where we know that Jesus is alive and has new life for each one of us. At some stage, I was involved in a dream group. I had someone I knew who was doing further studies in being a Christian and working with dreams. And so I was part of a Saturday morning dream group. And we take it in turns if we wanted to share a dream that we had. And part of the procedure was then people would say, if this were my dream, let's revisit that dream of Jacob's, the angels descending and ascending into heaven. If this were my dream, how am I invited to trust that God is with me in the challenges, the difficulties that I'm facing right now? Jacob said, this is the place, the house of God. This is a place where heaven and earth connect. How are they connected in my life? Or thinking in New Testament terms, where's the Jesus place for me? Where's the connecting spot? And Jacob realizes he's on holy ground because God's appeared to him. So my final thought is, how am I standing on holy ground right now? This is not just a dream. These things are real and true. And may you be blessed as you learn to discover that and trust that.